So the card is very dark, so we can't really appreciate the card as much as we'd like to. But I've been looking at this down on the stack for a while, and I want to talk about why Flesh and Bone is a pretty significant episode in all of BSG and what it did. Now the reimagined series didn't quite explore this angle, and that's okay. It may have, but here's what I love about Flesh and Bone. And I'll flip the card over. For folks that want to read the episode recap. Not only this is Laura putting somebody out the airlock again, but this and maybe there's a different card that does it. But Flesh and Bone is all about the interrogation scene with Starbuck and Leoben, and we get the lines from Scripture, right? All this has happened before, and all this has happened again. Now that's key for someone to geek out on a show that's trying to be very realistic and not quite go into all these sci-fi conventions. So what separates reimagined BSG from classic BSG, beyond just like the obvious aesthetic appeal to it, reimagined is attempting to be realistic, right? No aliens, no capes, just try to make it as much as look like Black Hawk Down as much as possible, which works. I have no issue with this. But I'm not going to call Ron Moore and his writers geniuses on this. But the small area to geek out with Flesh and Bone is that very line, and a couple others. All this has happened before. All this has happened again. And Leoben talks to Starbuck, and he said, "Last time, you were the prisoner, and I was interrogating you." Here's why this works. I hope this is the right episode. If not, I've just gone the wrong way. This is the interrogation, no? Yeah, the dream, because even though the cards focused on Rosalind and Leoben and the dream she had, I'm sure there's another Flesh and Bone card in this set where they touch on the interrogation between Starbuck and Leoben. All right, so whatever the card discusses, it doesn't matter because it's about that angle. But the beat I want to discuss is that this episode opens itself up to a few meta sci-fi conventions about, let's just call them different realities, different times, where the classic BSG and the reimagined can exist and possibly cross over in a similar way. Reimagined BSG does not have any godlike, well, it does. What am I talking about? But like the creatures of light or whatever that episode was where they all have white uniforms and they're in some kind of heavenly space. Okay, now Reimagined certainly touches on the supernatural. We cannot get away with that. We've got Head 6 and everything else, but all this has happened before and again gets to an opening that you can bring in classic BSG, and you can open up an entire parallel world of different readings of Battlestar Galactica, because the story is always going to be the same. That's what makes Battlestar Galactica. You cannot have Battlestar without the destruction of the colonies and the ragtag fleet getting away. That's core to any type of reimagining, however you want to do this story. That's what makes it key. That's what works. And a show like Flesh and Bone brings that into the larger meta narrative of this concept of a series, while also creating a compelling drama that doesn't get geeky. But when I saw Flesh and Bone, I'm like, oh, these are places that one could go with that. And Ron Moore did commentary for every episode of BSG, and if you watch his commentary to Kobal's Last Gleaming, the season ender, he really wanted, and he always had the idea of Six and Baltar walking in Manhattan at the end of the series, and he discusses that here too. But he also wanted Dirk Benedict to come back as God at the end of Kobal's Last Gleaming, so you could have that direct link with. Now we had the link with Apollo, Richard Hatch in there, but that's not as deep as it could be. Anyway, there's a lot to geek out on. I feel like I didn't do it justice, but watch Flesh and Bone again and consider what Leoben is talking about, because he's talking on various levels, because that's what the character does. It's a cryptic character. But he is touching on some kind of latent memory. If you want to call it a reincarnation, you can certainly do that. It's opened up to a lot of different angles. But on a sci-fi geek level, it opens up the space to link Classic BSG with where this reimagined version goes. And I hope that if they... I think they're making a new version. I haven't caught up on any news on this yet. But that link could always be there. And that's what someone like Leoben, who's going beyond like a perceptual... a perception beyond time and space. That's what we're looking into. So that's the role that all this plays into Flesh and Bone. Okay, that's too much. That's too much geek. But I just want to get that out of my system. I think I can do something more with that. I can really write it up. Maybe do in paper. But this is my first step. This is just getting those ideas out. I don't think I'm sure others have had it, but now I'm thinking more about it, because I tell you, this show is worth investigating again and again and again, the reimagined form. So that's my small little angle on Flesh and Bone. Have I been saying blood all this time? It's Flesh and Bone. There it is. Okay, not the best card, but that's what I wanted to talk about. All right, bye-bye.